Ty, it is such an honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on. I mentioned to you before we got started how much I love your presence, and I love your regular, non-ordinary, loving state of consciousness that you bring to all your platforms. And so I'm just so excited for my audience to get a taste of the light and kindness that you offer. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, well, sure. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me on. It's an honor to connect with you and your audience in this way. Clearly, I mean, we're all family and we're all in this process of remembering together. So this is a great opportunity for me to really see a lot of reflections through this, and I'm really appreciative. So thank you so much. I am Ty. I go by Ty L, and most likely is how people would hear about me, which is just Ty L is just what a label that I've given to the idea of the bigger me. If you want to refer to that as your higher self or the collective aspects of yourself, that's kind of how we refer to it. But I'm just Ty, so Ty works. But I would be what some people might refer to as maybe like a quantum architect, or an energy worker, an energy healer. My passion really is healing work. So I utilize a lot of different tools to do that and to make shifts really quickly in people's energetic fields and in their realities. And one of the main tools that I use for that is what people would refer to as light language, or light codes. And that's just essentially like a universal expression of energy that can be expressed in different ways. So I do it through vocal sounds and what sound like languages and weird sound effects and stuff like that. And then also through the sacred geometry of my body. So facilitating frequencies, like if my body was playing an instrument, like almost like holding chords to express the different frequencies. And essentially I specialize in upgrading people to who they actually are. So helping them remember really is what we focus on.
Amazing. And you say we, so are you connected with a group of other workers that work with you in the celestial form, or?
In some ways, yeah. So I only work with aspects of myself. So when I say we, it's like a huge collective of me, and that's kind of how I function. And if you hear me like expressing these different light languages, you might hear a lot of different you might say different dialects or different expressions of beings essentially, but they're all me. So I kind of like keep them, they a little bit keep them separate, like they're specialists in their own little thing. So it's like the big collective version of us, and kind of those different personalities that get expressed. I know it's a little weird, but
No,
that's what I
definitely
mean.
not. I mean, when we're thinking of life as such a linear life, but we've had so many lifetimes and ancestors, and there's so much more than the reality we're experiencing now. So it's definitely not weird. I'm just really grateful that you were able to acknowledge, and you had the capacity to accept and love yourself for the gifts that you actually have to offer, which I feel like humanity really needs a lot of right now. A lot of people can't get to that spot of opening their eyes. So I think the work that you do is really important.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree. That's part of why we're sharing what we do. And we haven't been sharing this side of us for a while, to be honest. Like only just started this summer to feel confident enough to finally share these things that we've been doing behind the scenes and through my own like healing practice, like my own work and my healing path. These things kind of come up behind the scenes, and it can be, really uncomfortable expressing how, it's very different. It's not stuff that you see a lot other people, expressing in this way, especially the way that I do it. So there was a lot of resistance before I started sharing it, and so a big part of what we're trying to do, or what I'm trying to do, is show people that it's okay to be exactly who they are, as weird as that might be. And I like to use weird a lot because to me it's not a bad thing at all. It's it's a badge that I like to wear. But and everybody has their own unique flavor of beingness, and so even showing how different these things can be, while still like holding that authenticity and whatever it is, it's like our superpower. You know what I mean? And that's really what we're trying to bring to the table. And all the work that we do is to help people remember who they are. And that's and to do that, we have to share who we are.
That is so beautiful. Would you mind, because I know there's a lot of listeners out there that are on the path, and it's really challenging at times. And I like to reveal some vulnerability of how human and similar our stories can be. Can you take us back to about some of your challenges and growth work that you did in your lifetime that kind of led you to really step into who you are?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's important to share too. So thank you for asking that. And so for me, my personal journey started, I mean, I guess I've kind of always been semi what people might refer to as awake, at least just conscious of different things, you know, like in grade school, I would go run off to the local library to look up stuff on aliens and Bigfoot and all those things. You know, I taught myself Egyptian hieroglyphics in like third or fourth grade, and you know, I was always into that stuff, but I was never fully consciously awake until much later, and that came through a process of healing that I was forced to be faced with. So I was diagnosed with something that was at the time that they were considering that's uncurable, and even they even used the term terminal at one point. But I really like it. There's these cysts that grew out throughout my nervous system, and essentially that happened when I became activated. I started becoming activated, and it kind of blew out my nervous system. But at the time, clearly, that's not something that's ever on your mind. And so I was just in a lot of really bad pain. So I was going through, you know, the Western medical system, going through all the doctors. You know, I was going to doctors 5-6 times a week, every specialist you could imagine, and you know, none of them had anything really great to say. So they were only like really trying to treat symptoms. You know, they gave really terrible prognoses. So I really kind of gave up for a while. I went really into a dark place, and you know, went through the depression, and been through, yeah, went really, really deep in that area of life, and for about 7 years where I was really like unfunctioning. I couldn't really walk well. And eventually a turning point happened when I was, you know, deciding I didn't want to be here anymore, and you know, went through an attempt, and it still wasn't seen afterwards, but something changed after that, and I realized that that wasn't going to be an option anymore. And so I kind of really started to explore other things again, and it was like the world kept showing me energy work, and it kept showing me healing in these different ways, but I really hadn't fully anchored it into my reality. Like I was always aware of it, but I hadn't experienced it yet. I hadn't had that full-on experience of feeling the energies and stuff like that. And so when I finally did, it shifted everything. Once I actually was able to be a part of a healing group and started interacting at a very tangible, experiential level, I started to recognize how powerful these tools are, and how really multidimensional we truly are. And started exploring different areas of energy healing, all sorts of healing, plant medicines. That plant medicine was a really big part of me healing, because it allowed for me, even at the most basic level, I switched off of all pharmaceuticals. You know, I gave that up really early on because it just wasn't working for me. It was making things worse. They didn't really help. They'd help for a short period and just was like terrible, and it just made me more depressed. And so really, once plant medicines was a really big transition for me, when I was able to treat my symptoms with plants instead of with pharmaceuticals. And then that gave me the space in order to find these different areas of healing, to be able to get the space that I needed so I could really try to heal instead of just trying to just manage the symptoms. And I did that originally through like Kratom. That was a huge tool for me, just because I was in so much pain. You know, obviously cannabis was helpful in some ways, but just not as much as I needed in these other ways that were really disabling to me. So once I was able to use that tool, it opened up a lot of things for me. And then eventually, you know, it continued to evolve for me, and I did healing work, and, you know, again, plant medicines were a big part of my path, because you know, when you're expressing things that are a little strange, at least you don't see them around in your reality. And I'm a little bit different in some ways, at least the way that my consciousness works. So I use these plant medicines to really get a deeper look into the way that I function that nobody else could ever articulate to me. Because it's just a little weird. So they're really powerful, and I'm really appreciative of that. And so I'm really appreciative that you're bringing that to a public eye, you know, and the way that you're doing from that system as well, you know, having, you know, being a nurse and seeing things from your from like inside there is so helpful. And seeing the power in these tools is so beautiful. So thank you so much for bringing that to the table.
Yeah, I love that you said basically activate your own inner healer and don't just manage the symptoms. That is like mind blowing. I just totally love that. And I also love that you said plant medicines help you go to a place that nobody else can articulate. How well said. I'm so excited that you said that, because that's exactly it. And you know, there's a big difference between checking out and then working with plant medicines, where you sit with your shadow self, you sit with a part of you, the ego that has nothing but bad things to say, and you're able to lift, sit with it, be uncomfortable, and move through. That healing work is so difficult to articulate, and it is so uncomfortable, but there's so many people right now that are ready for it, that know that that's the work. And just we're beginning to open a whole new door into healing. And it's not what you would think. And Western medicine has led us in a different way, where we do just manage the symptoms and we trust someone else. And now we're working in a place of empowerment, that the only way that we can heal is to empower ourselves enough to walk through the dark tunnel, no matter how dark it is. So I just love that.
That's beautiful. You perfectly articulated that. That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Because it is. It's about self-empowerment, you know. And that was a really frustrating thing for me going through, trying to figure things out. You know, like, you know, the stuff that they were saying. You know, they were prognosing that I would be. They even said 100% chance of being a paraplegic at one point. Like, who gives 100% of anything? You know, like, it just doesn't make sense. And so I lost a lot of faith in doctors. I almost, like, you know, I had a lot of resentment for a period, because they honestly, it really made it worse. And these are the top specialists in the country. And now, you know, going deeper into the understanding of how these systems work, you know, clearly you can go down a rabbit hole if you want, but, you know, there's definitely some things that should be changed, but it can cause so much damage. And it's about self-empowerment. Like, there's this level of arrogance and, you know, at the very least, ignorance in a lot of Western medicine that is causing a lot of harm, and it takes the power away from the individual. And that's not where we're moving into. Like, that time is done. You know, it's all about self-empowerment, and these tools are self-empowering. And I think that's why that a big part of why that they've been pushed away, at least, you know, in some legal perspectives and stuff in the past, because they've been around forever, you know. And there's no reason why they shouldn't be legal in all forms, you know, like all of them, you know, even from cannabis to even the, you know, the more psychedelic types. You know, these are amazing tools for self-empowerment, because they give you the tools that you can equip yourself, you know, and then you don't have to do what somebody else tells you. You can follow intuitively through your own intuition. But yeah, it's definitely about self-empowerment. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. And, you know, like we were talking about, it also leads to, you know, maybe mentors in your life that have taught you that it's okay to trust yourself. The work that you do is amazing, but it does take this amount of, I'm going to listen to the universe and I'm going to listen to myself. And that is it's a skill, you know, to be able to accept that. Can you take us back to, I don't know if you want to go back to like some of the challenges that you had in accepting who you really are, or how it landed originally to where you knew that there was no other choice.
Great questions. Let's see. We'll start with the first one. So you say that again. My memory's a little.
So like, I guess it's just like, I really am touched by your ability to recognize your own gifts. And I want to share that it is a skill that we develop to trust who we are and how we work. So I want to know how it landed. Did it land? Did you have an awakening where you knew this is the only way? And if you tried to live a different way, it just didn't work at all? Were you trying to stuff it down and ignore it for a process, or what did it look like? You know, if you could take us back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, and looking back now, it can be really glaringly obvious when I'm looking back, even really far back. Because so like when I first started to I guess awakened. So when I was even diagnosed, like there was so much going on, life and death was faced at me. So, and I was young, I was like, 24 or so. So to me, I didn't really even take it seriously. I didn't take that part seriously, but it was like shoved down in my face. They immediately started giving me counseling for, having to deal with this terminal illness. And so they were like really pushing in this programming for me. But through that process also, I was starting to wake up even like more and more. That's when I really started to get into meditation. So, and I got into meditation through doctors. So through my psychologist and my psychiatrist, they recommended getting into meditation, and we were doing so using biofeedback. And for me, that was a really powerful tool to kind of transition from this very logical driven perception that I had prior to all of this happening, where I was very logical minded, I'm very technical. So that made a lot of sense for me. I was able to see my vitals go down. I was able to see my brain waves shift when I got into certain states. So I really was able to see that working, which was great. And it was really, really helpful for me. And I started to wake up more and more. I started getting more into this, crystals and studying metaphysics more and more. But eventually I started smashing that snooze button. I was like, okay, it's not fully time to wake up, I think, and I went back asleep and kind of went further down because the symptoms started to get so intense, and it just wasn't fully time for me to step into who I was yet. So I went really, really deep, far back down. And I got into really depressive states. I used alcohol eventually as a way to manage my pain, because just the tool, like I gave up on all the pharmaceuticals pretty early on. They had me on so much stuff that it was very clear that wasn't working for me. And I'm a very sensitive person. So, and I process things really differently. So the medications would work for a second and then just not work at all. And it didn't really make any sense. So I dumped those really fast. And then transitioned. And yeah, I didn't have, from a nervous system issue, alcohol is a great depressant for your nervous system, and when I was just so high energy in, my fight or flight responses, my heart rates would never go under like 110. So like anything that would just bring things down was really helpful. But then, you go really deep, and there's, alcohol isn't a great way to manage anything. And so I got really, really bad for a while. And eventually, like, I didn't want to be around anymore. I mean, that was pretty early on. And so I was trying to secretly use it as a tool to get out of what was going on, and really overused it on purpose, and eventually blew out my pancreas and all sorts of stuff. So I was like in the hospital for a really long time, the ICU for like a month, and, and in and out of these different hospitals. But once I got out of there and nothing had changed, then I really tried to check out. And then I woke up and everything had changed for me. It felt so different, where it would just, at that point is where I realized that it just wasn't an option. I had not talked to anybody about any of these things, really. I kept it really quiet because, and I'm looking back now and I'm seeing that I was really struggling holding on to the identity that I thought I was supposed to be. Like I was still really holding on to what we might perceive as the American dream. Like I had a career that I had started when I was in high school, and, I had worked really, really hard in this firm that we had, and I got sick and I couldn't function anymore. And so I was just like spiraled out, and, I was really fighting to hold on, losing the idea of having a family. These different things like just weren't an option. So I had to really like let those parts of me die, and like literally and almost very literally let those parts of me die so that I could be something else. So I really fought really hard to try to hold on to those old identities. And I think that was causing me a lot of pain, was trying to hold on to these perceptions of who I thought I was supposed to be, and what I thought culture wanted me to be and society wanted me to be, and looking around and not seeing people perceive things the same way that I did. Even my friend groups and stuff, like I was always thinking about things in a more conscious way, and just always trying to have the deeper conversations that just never were reflected back. And so I just kept it all in, and then that just, and so yeah, that was, it was really hard for me to eventually come out once I started to do a lot of healing work on myself. Once I finally started to realize that it was time to truly wake up And I started finding that there were tools, you know, using meditation and energy work and all the different, you know, plant medicines, all these different things that I could really empower myself. It was a big shift for me. But yeah, it was really tough once I started expressing how strange, you know, things are. Like when you start speaking what are perceived as different languages, and you know, you're moving your body in all these weird ways. My eyes roll, my eyes flash. You know, for me, it's like it went from 0 to 100. So there's no way for me to I went through that period. Oh, I'm like, I can be like a Reiki practitioner, and that just did not work for me. You know, like I couldn't do like the normal things that like it just was never going to work. And so I, again, even in that state, even when I was in that awakened state, I felt like an outsider. I was really in my own little corner. And I kept things quiet again. I was really holding things in, and that was just making me more sick still. So even as I was awake, I wasn't able to express who I fully was, and it was just making me more sick and more sick and more sick, you know, because I wasn't able to truly be my authentic self. And so not only until like just this past, I would say late spring, did I finally decide through the push from spirit that it's time to start sharing who you are, you know, relentlessly, like ferociously, just being yourself, whatever that is. And luckily there's, you know, a lot of great platforms now. You know, I was pushed to use TikTok, which I had never used before. They're just like, use TikTok. I'm like, what? So I was like, well, okay, you know, at that time I thought I was just dancing. So I was like, well, yeah, I love to dance to my, you know, express these light languages and light codes to music, because to me, it is like music. And so I was like, oh great. And I put it up there, and I was expecting just to get like annihilated, you know, just like it's this weird, you know, I was expecting the worst, and, you know, really not having any expectations at that point. Like I didn't care. I was like, F it. So I'm gonna put myself out there and whatever, just because I'm doing it. I'm stepping forward and I'm putting myself out, because I wasn't letting family know. Nobody knew anything. And so I did that, and it was just really, it was really smooth. Like it was really well received, and it just kept growing and growing, and people responded really well. And I was able to just be more and more myself, and very quickly realized that, you know, that's our superpower, is just to be who we are. And that can be really hard, especially when you don't see yourself in those around you as much as you think that they are. But once you actually start expressing it, you'll be surprised, because they're going to resonate with it, because it's just so authentic, and that it gives permission for other people to be themselves too.
Oh,
Like that's what's really powerful.
yeah. You know, I just have to say that, you know, for individuals that are moving into a change in sexual identity, for example, I learned that, you know, when people come out of the closet per se, it's not just one day you come out of the closet and you're fixed. What I learned is that you are continually educating people and expressing this in your life. So my question to you is, now that you really have stepped into your, you know, magnificent authenticity, do you still every day have to feel like you are in this continual process of coming out of the closet of who you were before?
That's a great question. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, I think that's what spirituality is to me, is to figure out who you are. And I don't think that process ever ends, you know what I mean? And because we're always trying to learn more about who we are, I think that's kind of our role, is being so unique, and being that unique perspective of all that is from our own, whatever we're looking at. We're the only thing in the multiverse that is looking at that thing in the way that we're looking at it, you know? But yeah, like it's just, yeah, absolutely.
Well, that was crazy. So you just said that we are the only thing in the multiverse that is looking at ourselves the way we're looking at ourselves. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, even in like a literal sense, like if you just look down at the thing that's in your room, you're the only thing looking at that thing, and then you're the only thing feeling in that way, that you're feeling from the history that you've experienced it. Like that is what we're all bringing to the table. We're collecting data about who are we. We're looking around at things and trying to figure out who are we through these reflections around us. And we get feedback on how it makes us feel, and that feedback, we decide if we want to start steering things towards that way, or prefer to maybe steer it in another way. But that's what we bring to the table, is exactly whatever it is that we're experiencing and who we are, and trying to figure out who we are.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to remember, you know, if I'm stuck, if I'm ruminating, if something happened or whatever, you know, when I'm at my best, I can be like, you know, this is a human experience, but it's not the only human experience. We have access to all sorts of different human experiences. And one of my favorite one is the connection to all, that having that greater connection. And that, you know, for me, of course, plant medicine really led me to my own spirituality, because I also had a career, I was driving myself so hard. I don't know if you've listened, but I gave up drinking alcohol 2 years ago because I was miserable and I wasn't letting myself feel that, because I felt like I had to live that American dream, as you said. I feel like a lot of people can go that direction without knowing it. And before they know it, they're, you know, in a place where it's just unhealthy. So yeah, I kind of forgot where I was going with that, but I just feel like, oh yeah, so and then with plant medicines and non-ordinary states, being able to tap into that higher realm. And I think a lot of people, especially in the newer generations, don't have a spirituality basis. So I like the way that you're also describing spirituality as actually a process of self-understanding. And there's also this element of like this flexibility, grace, and how can we move ourselves out of this small human experience and into the larger human experience of connection, of things not being so sticky, hard, and tight, like we were talking about, which wasn't recorded earlier, about what's happening in the world right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah, because it feels like yeah, we're changing the way we connect with each other, is what I think. You know, do you think that's true? Because
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that and that's where we're going to, like, and we can label it however we want. You know, people can say that we're moving into a new earth, or we're moving towards this or that. And in my perspective, we're moving towards more unity consciousness. That's where we're going, instead of these singular identities of accomplishment or perceived accomplishment. We're moving away from what, you know, we're waking up. I know I hate even using that, like it's just so overused, the waking up thing. But still, it's like we're waking up to the way that things can be outside of these boxes. We're really dismantling things at a collective level of that's holding us in these containers, and these other generations and stuff, they see right through that, no problem. Like our generation is really the ones that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting and dismantling these programs, because we came from both sides of it. You know, we were there definitely all into these structures, and we're going to be the ones that are breaking it down. And these younger generations are just going to be who they are, which is so beautiful. They're just
Wow.
being able to share exactly who they are, and they have a lot to teach us. These kids that are coming in right now that are being born are like straight up, they're full on, you know. They're waking up their parents, which is so beautiful to see. Is that, you know, like I'm seeing these babies be born into families that would be so like not at all paying attention to these ideas, but they're having these kids that are coming full online, remembering their past lives and having their gifts available. And how can you deny these things when it's your own child that is showing you these things day in and day out? I think it's a really like organic and you know, yeah, organic way of waking up at a collective level to break down these systems from within, you know.
Yeah, and I think you called it out, and by recognizing that, you're also giving our generation, you and I, permission to do the heavy lifting. It does feel hard. It
Yeah.
does feel like this sense of freedom, waking up, stepping into authenticity, but dragging along the old baggage. And I guess that's why I mentioned that about you know, people transitioning their sexual identity and it being a continual process, because it feels to me, I'm not transitioning my sexual identity, but I'm transitioning my spirituality and my own process and my own consciousness. And it feels that hard too, not to diminish the experience of, you know, moving through different types of transitions. But it does feel hard, and you're giving us permission to recognize that in ourselves, that we're doing a lot of collective work. And I do feel also, like you said, really connected to our ancestors. I was listening to this particular program called The Guiding Presence, which is so cool. It's about being psychedelic integration. And there's this one woman who does this work where each of we visualize out of the back of our heart a feather coming out, and that's our mother. And every generation on our mother's side becomes a wing. And we also, it's like a whole meditation that you do. And then your other wing is your father. And there was also, I'm not sure if you saw this, but there was a study on mice that if they would smell a cherry blossom feather, they would get electrocuted. And that memory, did you see that? That memory of the cherry blossom smell lasted for 20 generations, that these mice would not smell. So our DNA, there's so much more to who we are and what we've experienced from that wing of our father and from that wing of our mother. And the more I study, you know, because I'm also moving away from Western medicine, like I always should have in the beginning, but there is this prenatal period. There's so much happening in levels of who we are that we don't know. And so I guess my message, and I love you coming here today, is also to forgive ourselves and to allow this journey, no matter how hard it may seem, because there's got to be space for you to do this process. So I guess I just want to ask, like, what are the messages that you kind of like, I know you do work, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about the work that you do on a personal level to help activate people for who they really are. But are there messages that you feel are consistent that you need to remind people of, like it's okay to be easy on yourself, or like what is a theme that's happening with the work you're doing with humanity?
I think you nailed it just with that. And it's that simple, is just to be yourself, like to allow yourself to be who you are in that moment, because we're going through a huge transitionary period where, like, if you want to say it's the egos of the past dying over and over and over again, and a new version of you being born in every moment. And it's really tough because it's so easy to hold on to an identity that we think that we are, but things are moving so quickly that it's okay to shift out of that identity. Even, you know, like the person that I was when I started waking up to these ideas, you know, when I first got into energy work, it's like 1,000 different versions of myself have died since then. You know, like, I mean that like literally and figuratively at the same time, like having to let go and die in parts of who you thought you were, and let go of those things, those attachments to what you think things are supposed to be like, and just allowing yourself to be in the now moment. I think it's really important too that you know, what you're bringing to the table. I just came pop back up in my mind, so there's a reason why I'm bringing it up. But like, you know, like you mentioned that you're moving away from Western medicine, and I think it's also important to not invalidate other things as well. Not that you were, but that it's okay for us to still have Western medicine. We need that, but we need to. You know, it's not this, for me, a big part of the teaching is it's not this or that, it's this and that. And like power, like true power, is being able to stand between what you prefer and you don't prefer without invalidating either one of them. And so, but you know, having that background and you being, you know, because we don't change the world around us. I know that's a really easy thing to perceive, is like we're changing the world, we're changing into this new world. But the way that I perceive things is that's not what's happening. We are changing ourselves, and the world around us reflects that. So we're shifting from within, and the more work that we do on that level, the more that we're able to really let those old versions of us die, the more that we see that reflected around us. So like what you're doing in your work, you know, you're in there, and you're changing you while you're in these places, and that is so powerful because it's so organic. You know, you're not forcing these, you're not using the old the old energies of the past systems where it's like it should be this way. You know, it should either be plant medicine or it should be pharmaceuticals. Like, no, we can figure out a way to work together, and we do that by changing ourselves, and then we see what it looks like. You know, it's an organic process. But.
Thank you. I really feel like everyone listening needed to hear that today, that we do perceive, you know, changing the world, that we think everything's on our shoulders, but the real work is inward. And it's so hard to remember that, especially our generation who took on so much. You know, I was a young mom. I had to, just take on so many different roles. And then you break. What's happening is our generation is breaking down. They're like, this is not for us. Okay, how the hell do we live? It's just so weird. So we definitely need, and I love also the message of, it isn't this or that. It doesn't have to be that dichotomy. We do not have to be in that fight, that it is more of an inward landing and choosing how we feel and who we are, and also the community around us. So I know that, for example, one of your amazing TikToks was you gathered like, somehow, I don't know if this was your doing, but you were doing the light language with all the other light language workers. And it was like, what the hell? It was mind blowing. It was like mind blowing. Can you tell us a little bit about the energetic community that you're now a part of? Because I know you said before you didn't have anybody you could tell. Could you tell us now what it's like to communicate who you are and the community you have?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the best part is like once you start actually allowing yourself to be authentically you, those people that are of that same energy, the same frequency, or of a similar frequency, start to come into your reality, and it becomes really, again, organic, really fluid. And that's the best part about it, I think, is just people coming into your reality that allow you to fully be who you are, even more than you thought you could be. And again, it's that continuing process. But yeah, I mean, that's my favorite part is about all of this stuff is just interacting with people and helping people remember who they are, because that's all that we really focus on. I focus on in our work is to help people to remember who they are, and whatever it is, that's what it comes down to, is allowing people to be themselves. And we do that through what people would refer to as activations, and are using our light languages, and are what we refer as coding. But to me, it's just really removing all that we're not, so that we can remember who we are. And there's so many powerful beings that are coming online to this awareness, and that's what we do, is these activations, really. And there's when people get activated, it's more of a remembrance thing. So our videos do that for a lot of people, where all of a sudden, or they've been doing it, they didn't realize that they've been doing it for so long. Like a lot of people start expressing these different movements and mudras when they're like on medicine. They didn't really understand it, and until they see somebody like me expressing it in this way, it just becomes a click on. And so it's really awesome to get to connect with other people who have been turned on in that way, and that are continuing to discover more of themselves and share that. And as a group, like we put together these group frequencies. It just compounds things, like it just like exponentially increases the power when we get together in these containers together. And yeah, I think that's where we're really heading, is figuring out things together, but at being so authentic in our own energy that it organically grows in bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's so big once we do these things, especially on this planet this time. We are big players here, huge players. So it's an honor.
Yeah, you're making me feel like a big player. Thank you for that. That feels really good.
You absolutely 100% are.
Everyone listening is a big player,
Absolutely. We're all part of it. Like we all bring what I would refer to as codes. So light is information to me. This kind of how I perceive things. It's light is data. And we all bring our own data to the table. Like to me, when I express the light languages, I like to articulate it more like music than it is. So like when people would hear me speaking a language, they're asking, oh, what language is that? Like, what are you saying? And to me, I try to really not discourage that, but just look at it from a deeper perspective, because it's a really multidimensional way of expressing energy. And to me, I perceive it more like music. And I like to use that analogy for everything, that we are music. Even the idea of the universe is the one song, like we are music. And we have our own unique personal song that we can sing, in our energy field, literally like vibrationally, we are this one song. And it's not about like changing our song. It's about more like removing all this noise that's in our energy field that is mudding up our song, so that we can actually be heard for what we actually are. And expressing these things, these light languages and these things like that are like playing music. It's like being, it's a feeling thing. It's not really for the logical mind. Like music, you just feel the vibration. You can feel the emotion in the song without knowing the lyrics. And even if two people knew the lyrics to the same song, they may interpret those lyrics completely different. And I think that's how energy works in general. That's the multidimensionality of energy.
Wow, good description. That was so good. I'm so happy to hear that. Okay, so my question for you is, I know many of us who are moving through this wake up process will have self-doubt creep in. And I wonder, like, if you're like me, if you go like, am I just crazy? Like, I am so different and so crazy. What are the tools that you use to let go of that ego mind and move back into who that energy mind?
That's a great question. I think that's an individual journey. That's going to look so different for every person. For me, I knew that I would have to eventually, like I could always feel it through my awakening process, that I would eventually have to, I would be something in front of a lot of people. And that always made me really uncomfortable. I didn't know how that was going to play out, especially since I wasn't comfortable in what I was expressing yet. So that made it, it was a little bit of a different process for me. It was really tough to let that come through. So, but it's just really important to remember that you're different, and figuring that out on your own is part of your awakening process. That's really the trick to it. And you don't have to be somebody that's like out in front in the huge public eye, you know, like you don't need to, you know, have a TikTok with, you know, 100,000 followers or whatever. Like it doesn't really matter what you do, as long as you're able to fully express who you are in that moment and allow yourself to shift, because that's what spirituality is really about to me, is being able to shift who you are into a new version of you in any given moment based on what you prefer, and not invalidating what you don't prefer. That makes a huge difference.
Yeah,
Allowing people to be themselves.
it was like poetry when you said, I've allowed 1,000 different versions of myself to die before. Like that was like, that is like beautiful, super beautiful. And I really also love how you called out how unique it is for our own journey to do that work of not judging ourselves, understanding and recognizing when we are in our own individual way, whatever that looks like, and to continue to move forward. And you'd mentioned that the work and the spirituality is living authentically, and what that means, and then letting go what is not us. What that also means is really landing into the now, into the moment, into our fullness. So there's this Zen quality to allowing the fullness of who we are, whatever we are, and also this beautiful natural grace, because on our logical mind, we don't think of transitioning day after day into a new version, or moment after moment into a version. But if we look outside to the mushrooms and the trees and the forest and the way that the natural world works, that's how the natural world works. It's in that continual grace and change. That's a really good reminder.
Yeah, and they don't judge themselves where they're at. You know, they allow themselves to go through the ebbs and flows and the cyclical nature of what they are. And we do that too. Like we're not separate from nature. We go through our own little cycles. We go through ups and downs, and collectively we're going higher and higher up, but we still go down and down. You know, it's not like going up and down like waves. It's more like going up and a little bit down, and up and a little bit down, and up and a little bit down. So we're going higher and higher. And yeah, just not judging yourself for where you're at in that moment makes a huge difference, because nature doesn't judge itself. Allowing ourselves to shift is really, really important for being who we are. And, you know, like it could be some like little steps, you know, you can just be starting to do more things like expressing yourself, and making art, or you know, or starting a business that is more in alignment with you. Like it's little steps, and allowing yourself to do those little steps without thinking that you have to do the big steps. It can be a big tool for a lot of people. And that's how it started with me, is just taking little steps, allowing myself to be seen, or allowing myself to be in little groups, and feeling things out, and just getting little reflections back that could, you know, just not necessarily validate things. I don't want to say that you need validation from outside, but it's a process of projection and reflections, and seeing how that feels, and which do you prefer, like which way do you want to prefer to go in that moment, and allowing yourself to do that. Because you know, there's no once you have attachments to where you think you should be, like people think I need to be helping people, like that. And that's a really common thing when people wake up. It's like, I need to be doing this, and I really need to be healing. I know that I'm a healer. I need to be healing people. Like I should be doing this, and I'm not that point yet. Like, why am I not there yet? And we got to let go of that, because, and just be who we are, because in our natural state, we are healers. You know, we're all have these gifts and abilities. And once we let go of those attachments to things, it becomes a lot easier to see what's that natural state, and that resonates back to us.
Yeah, and what I see a lot in your eyes, in your videos, and the work that you do is this childlike openness and wonder. There isn't, you have an ability to move into this open and curiosity that leaves you really light and fresh. And that's, I think, what I enjoy the most. And so I just think that that's a good reminder, like that, to stay that fluid and to stay open and curious on our journey, and not be so attached to where we think we need to be. Our minds are just, can be so difficult sometimes.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, thank you for bringing that up. It's like being a child is really the goal. It's like letting our inner child play. Like, and our inner child has been so suppressed and repressed over, forever. Like, we've never truly been allowed to express our inner child as adults, and that's starting to change. And that's where we're heading. Is we need, like, that's the key, is letting your inner you play. Making it, not taking it so seriously, because as kids, we don't judge ourselves for how we dress up. Like, we put together these really cool little costumes, and we think, we got our cowboy boots on with our basketball shorts and our crazy hat, and and we were ready to go, and it's our favorite thing ever. We got this whole costume set up, and we go step outside, and if somebody judges us for that, it kind of we start to be, oh, okay, I guess it's not okay to be myself. Like, oh, I thought like this was that. And I think, and now we're coming into this time where it's becoming okay. Like, everybody's expressing more of who they are, and letting that inner child play is really, really important. The work that we do in light language, that's what I suggest for everyone. If they want to start expressing light language, is just to start playing. Allow things to come through, because eventually the energies that will be carried on these sounds, and they'll be carried on your movements. We're expressing light language and light codes all the time. We just don't recognize it. And when we're really allowing ourselves to play is when it can come through the most naturally.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for giving everyone permission to play. I mean, I can feel sometimes those languages wanting to come out, but I don't allow it to, because it doesn't make sense. So thank you so much for that permission. And I just want to share with the audience where people can find you, and what you offer right now, and where you're planning to go in the future.
Yeah, great questions. Thank you. Yeah, so if you're really interested in just learning more at all, the best way to do that is just to check out our content, like on TikTok. We post most of our stuff on TikTok. And we post things like free healing stuff. So there's, like, if you're interested in just getting some powerful shifts in your own energy field, through healing or activations, there's a lot of free resources there. Like, you don't even need to come to me to get these things, because they can all be done multidimensionally outside of space-time through these transmissions. I know it's a hard thing for the logical mind to really understand, which is why I encourage people to experience it, to really go in with an open mind, watch these videos with an open mind and open heart, and just observe what happens, and you might be surprised. So that's what I would suggest first.
And that's at Ty Heals. Is it TY?
TYEL Heals, Tyel Heals. Yeah, and I'm sure if you look up light language and Tyel or something, or whatever, you'll find this on TikTok. But yeah, that would be what I would suggest. And if you're looking for any services and whatnot, you can find me through there as well, or just ty-el.com. It'll send you. For now, my link tree, I'm trying to update my stuff right now, but I have no time. So, but we do one-on-one sessions as well. So if there's an area of healing that you really you would like some consultation on, or if you're really trying to get to that next level, again, what we specialize is in upgrades, helping people to activate who they truly are and get them to that point as quickly as possible. And we use these different tools that are really, really powerful for doing that. So one-on-one is a great way to do that. But my passion is healing too. So if there's something that you're going through that you could really use some healing work on, I like to be challenged, and we can talk and help out. Because again, I came from that side of things, where I know how disabling pain can be. I know how these are, what we're going through can be really, really tough, but it is an opportunity for us to wake up to who we are. And I, and that's what I really want to help in my sessions with, is to empower you, not just heal you, but empower you with your tools so you can start to heal yourself. And through my TikTok as well, we share a lot of those practical tools, like really simple practical tools that we use to get us to where we're at. And it starts really simply, just really simple techniques, and you'd be surprised how much you can heal yourself with just really basic practical techniques. And so we do share those as well through there.
Wow, this was such a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much. I mean, I'm sure everybody who is listening live is just going to have a wonderful Saturday. I know I feel 100% better, and all my worries have kind of lifted just from getting to hang out with you. So I'm so grateful for the opportunity. So thank you so much for coming to the show.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for inviting me on. It's like an honor. It's such an honor. It's not like an honor. It is such an honor to be here in this way and again to be seen for who I am, and putting myself out there. It was really difficult, and so I encourage everyone to just take those little small steps to allow themselves to play and allow themselves to be them, because you will be seen for who you actually are, and there's no better reward than doing that. So I thank you so much for all that you're bringing to the collective, all the work that you're doing for yourself, because as we heal ourselves, we literally do heal the world. We heal the collective. Again, we're changing ourselves, not the world around us. And the more that we heal ourselves and change ourselves, that's going to be reflected. So thank you so much for doing that. And thanks everybody for listening to me blab away for a while. And I would love to connect, hear feedback from you, at all. Any feedback is great feedback. And if you have any questions or anything like that, I love to answer questions. Clearly, I like to talk, so don't be shy to reach out for any reason. And I do my best to get back to you as soon as possible.